name is Andre Marcu. I'm the director of the European Roundtable on Climate Change and Sustainable Transition. So we'll give it a few moments while people are signing in, then we can start. What I would like, first of all, is to take people very quickly through the agenda as we start speaking. This workshop is part of the EU project, the EU-Turkey climate change policy is financed by the European Union with the scope of the Civil Society Dialogue Program between EU-Turkey, which is coordinated by the Directorate of EU Affairs. The overall objective of the project is to establish a sustained dialogue between Turkish and European civil society, private actors, and public institutions on the articulation of climate change policy between the EU and Turkey and climate policy development in general. The one thing that I wanted to first of all mention is that there will be a simultaneous translation, English, Turkish, Turkish to English. The one thing that you have to do is click on the globe at the bottom and choose the preferred language. As mentioned, the objective is to establish a sustained dialogue between Turkish and EU civil society on the articulation of climate policy and formulate the holistic policy vision strategy that will help structure CSO's strategy and action plans towards clear climate change policy objective. The objective is very much a dialogue, but it's not a dialogue to ensure that it's a one-off. It's very much a dialogue that will be about the it's very much a dialogue that will be about the sustained dialogue, something that we can leave behind us. There's a whole slew of communication strategies. There's a lot of engagements that we are trying to put in place at this time in order to ensure the sustainability and continuity of this dialogue between Turkish civil society and other actors, as well as European. This is an important element. Turkey and the EU are neighbors, good neighbors, and they have cooperated in many areas, and cooperation on the area of climate change through civil society, it's an important element of this. Now, in terms of project activities, we have, in order to arrive where we have arrived here, we have first interviewed with 10 different organizations, universities, NGOs, development agency, industry association, Chamber of Commerce, WWF, a whole bunch of people to understand what are the priorities. And the reason for that is that there are a number of activities that are extended throughout the workshop that we try to ensure that we have the right topic. There are 4 interactive workshops. This workshop was supposed to take place in person in Turkey. Unfortunately, we have to do it via electronic platforms. We hope that in the future this will change. We see that things are getting somewhat better. Many people are getting vaccinated, so hopefully the next ones will be different. The next workshop will be in October, the EU-Turkey Climate Policy Dialogue. It'll be a deep dive on EU CBAM, EU ETS, and the just transition mechanism. There'll be a policy vision document, and this, as I mentioned, a sustained dialogue after the project and communication activities. This is very much, and this is very important to us, that this is a stakeholder-driven process. CSOs can contact. We want to understand what is most useful to them. As we progress after this workshop, if there are new ideas, new visions, new things that people want to discuss, we're very much open to discussing them and not being kind of closed-minded. This is a very rapidly, if you want, evolving agenda. That the changes have been tremendous, historical, and rapid over the last 1.5 years, 2 years. And I don't think they will change and they will slow down. So with this, I will stop my initial kind of welcoming remark. We have keynote speeches from Elina Badran, who's the Director of International Mainstreaming and Policy Coordination, DG Klima and European Commission. and Mr. Kavit Burak Bural, who is the expert sectoral policies department director for EU Affairs, Directorate for EU Affairs, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in the government of Republic of Turkey. Elina, thank you very much. We know that you've got meetings, I think, tomorrow dealing with all kinds of things in the UNSCC process, which are within your responsibility. You have a very big package coming within 10 days. So you have a few things to do. As such, you taking the time here today is very appreciated. Please go ahead.
Thanks very much, Andre, and thanks so much for inviting us to be a part of this important workshop. I think it goes without saying that as the EU has enhanced its ambition quite radically, it will be super important for us to ensure that our partners understand and appreciate our positions and our vision, and that we can find an alignment in this effort to transition to net zero emissions economy to the extent possible. So let me start with a few reflections on Turkey's climate policy. Turkey's position in the international climate regime is a somewhat peculiar one. As we know, Turkey has not ratified the Paris Agreement. It is the EU's and the international community's expectation that Turkey would swiftly complete the ratification process in the Paris Agreement, as we don't think that it should be an option not to ratify the Paris Agreement, as we want to indicate to the outside world that the longer term policy has to be of commitment and ambition for climate action. And not ratifying an international agreement could mean that the market signal to attract low carbon investment and renewable energy investment would not be strong enough. As we know, in the very important G7 discussions that are ongoing now, it's useful to note that Turkey is among those countries whose emissions have grown fastest over the last 20 years. So it is very important that Turkey participates in the global efforts, and we've seen very good signs from many major economies, such as Japan, Korea, Canada, even China, that has committed to a net zero transition. We think that as the world is moving towards an objective of reaching net zero by 2050 or soon after, all major emitters, including Turkey, including EU, need to thoroughly assess their potential for cutting emissions as fast as science tells us. There's no doubt that urgent action is needed, including through long-term planning and new, more ambitious emissions reduction targets by 2030. And we'd like those submissions to come forward well ahead of COP26. At the same time, Turkey, like the EU, already suffer from the consequences of climate change in a very tangible way, as the ecological disasters folding, for example, in the Marmara Sea is showing. We have certainly noted some interesting developments in Turkey at the moment. The climate law that could be introduced to the parliament soon, the national adaptation strategy, which is being revised, and the action plan on the European Green Deal that we understand to be in the pipeline. These are very interesting steps that Turkey must use as a springboard in order to project a more comprehensive, almost aggressive vision of actions to decarbonize the economy for 2030 and 2050, and for improving its resilience. Crucially, Turkey needs to take urgent provisions in order to reach an emissions peak in the coming years and aim at a sharp decrease in its emissions to reach net zero in the coming 3-4 decades. Aiming at net zero is not unrealistic. It is actually the only way to go, as it is reshaping the global order. Let me say a few words about the implementation of the European Green Deal. As you know, the EU has translated its ambition to reach climate neutrality by 2050 into new emission reduction targets also for 2030. Based on the proposal from the Commission, in December, the EU leaders endorsed in the European Council a new climate target of at least 55% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2030 compared to 1990 levels. This agreement sent a strong signal to the world on the 5-year anniversary of the Paris Agreement. Our 2050 and 2030 objectives have been made legally binding in the European Climate Law Regulation, which was recently adopted by the co-legislators. We have also adapted our our new strategy for climate change adaptation, and it will increase support for international climate resilience and preparedness by prioritizing action and increasing effectiveness through stronger global engagement and exchanges on adaptation. This is different from what we did before, and it recognizes the global dimension also in the area of enhancing resilience. In order to make sure that the changes we are going to go through are socially viable and inclusive, we have launched a just transition mechanism supported by a just transition fund. These mechanisms work domestically to the EU, but we're very willing to share experiences as decommissioning coal-fired power plants has to become a trend across the world. We have also launched initiatives in a broad set of areas, also contributing to enhanced climate action, ranging from the new Circular Economy Action Plan to the EU Biodiversity Strategy for 2030 and the new Farm to Fork Strategy. And particularly relevant for today's discussions, we are launching a climate pact in order to facilitate the exchange of good practices and knowledge on climate across Europe, in order to stimulate citizens' participation in the fight against climate change and for resilience. The citizen, the society have to be a part of the solution. In almost precisely 1 week from now, next Wednesday, we will table a full array of legislative proposals in order to make our new emissions reduction goal for 2030 operational. The Fit for 55 package is planned for adoption on the 14th of July. This package will cover everything from renewables to energy efficiency, as well as land use, energy taxation, effort sharing, and emissions trading, and a wide range of other pieces of legislation. Furthermore, the Commission will propose to revise the CO2 emission standards for cars and vans in order to ensure a clean pathway towards zero emissions mobility. Something that was already mentioned by Andrei, our legislative proposal for carbon border adjustment mechanism will also be part of the package, with the objective of reducing emissions in the EU by avoiding carbon leakage. The package that's coming forward is a complete overhaul of all the instruments we have at our disposal. It will profoundly change the texture of EU economy, industry, and society, and it will be irreversible. And of course, indirectly, it will impact our dealings with our third country partners. So finally, as we embark on this journey of ambition, we would expect our privileged partners and important allies to pursue more actively the integration of European acquis on topics such as monitoring, verification, reporting of emissions, carbon pricing, energy efficiency, renewable energy sources, and sustainable finance. We understand that there is reciprocal interest both in the EU and Turkey to bring cooperation on strategic topics such as climate even further. And the European Council in March 2021 paved the way for a possible high-level dialogue on climate between EU and Turkey. We have had some initial discussions with our Turkish counterparts in order to explore their value added of that type of dialogue, what topics could be covered, and to explore also the right format that would pave way for a successful outcome. And in this context, the EU-Turkey climate policy dialogue is also very welcome. I'm sure it will build on many connections that already exist among civil society organizations from EU and Turkey, and on the work that has already been done to consolidate Turkey needs a vibrant and active civil society to underpin a rapid transition towards green economy and society. And the choices we have to make in order to stay within the 1.5 degrees compared to pre-industrial levels are truly civilizational ones. It requires 360-degree discussions across society. Policymakers do not make the policies for themselves or the sake of policymaking. It is to deliver for protecting our people, for protecting our competitiveness, and making sure that our economies are fit for future. No country in the world will run away from making these choices, and if they are not addressed, the consequences may be even harsher. What we see in terms of heat waves across the globe, in terms of unpredictable weather, is just early signs of things to come. It is our responsibility to look at our future with a clear eye and to anticipate these trade-offs and the consequences of climate change that already affect us. Such debates need civil society. They need to be fed by the variety of interests and standpoints that compose a society. And that makes me very happy to be here today to strengthen ties among EU and Turkish civil society organizations. I genuinely hope that the discussions in this format will ensure better understanding and foster on both sides an awareness level about climate change that runs deep into our respective societies. Thank you.
Thank you, Elina. Indeed, historical changes. The EU is in many ways taking the lead on this and looking for partners to continue this journey, which is historical, as I said, and irreversible. Very much so. Kavit Burak Bural, you have the floor now. I think that obviously we thank very much the government of Turkey also for the support in this project.
Thank you. Dear director, dear participants, with the last minute change today, Burcu Altınordu Hanım is not able to attend the meeting due to a health concern with his father. So I greet you on behalf of the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Director for EU Affairs. First, I would like to express my pleasure to be at this workshop to kick off the EU-Turkey Climate Policy Dialogue project, which I believe will make an important contribution to civil society dialogue efforts of our country. Environment and climate change represent one of the most important and challenging EU policy areas as they directly impact the quality of life of citizens. Accordingly, the environment and climate change chapter is one of the most important chapters in Turkey's EU accession process, and it contains a significant part of the EU acquis, actually. Accession negotiations between Turkey and the EU on Chapter 27 on the environment and climate change have been ongoing since December 2009 with the contribution of all related institutions, and the ongoing accession process under Chapter 27 is a strong driving force behind the improvement of environmental standards in our country. So each and every step taken in the direction of implementing EU's environmental norms in Turkey will further improve the quality of life of our citizens. Ladies and gentlemen, as an EU candidate country, we are closely following the priorities of the European Commission in the field of environmental and climate change. And in this context, we are witnessing now that the European Green Deal, which was officially announced as the EU's new growth strategy in December 2019, and aims to make Europe the first ever climate neutral continent of the world by 2015, is already having significant repercussions for EU targets and policies across many fields, as we'll be discussing during this workshop. So the Green Deal encompasses a set of far-reaching measures in almost all sectors of the EU economy, including energy, transport, agriculture, industry, and so on, with the aim of fostering transition to a competitive, resource-efficient, and circular economy. We consider that the European Green Deal, which envisages stricter regulations in many areas of the Union legislations, will have an important implications not only for our efforts to align with the acquis, but also for economic relations with the Union. And accordingly, this transformation process is closely followed by Turkey in the context of her EU accession process and her trade and economic relations with the Union. In that regard, we believe that the Turkey's draft action plan for the Green Deal, which was created under the coordination of Minister of Trade, and with the contributions of relevant public and private sector stakeholders, will guide our country's harmonization efforts in this area. Ladies and gentlemen, the fight against climate change is high on our agenda as it is in the EU. Accordingly, many significant efforts are being undertaken to improve the capacity and infrastructure in our country in the areas of combating climate change and adaptation. And we hope that the EU-Turkey Climate Policy Dialogue Project, financed within the scope of the Civil Society Dialogue Program between EU and Turkey, for which we gathered here today, will be a great example of success among these efforts and will make its contribution to our country's fight against climate change. As mentioned, with the European Green Deal, the EU set out a detailed plan to reconcile the challenges of climate change and environmental degradation with competitiveness and economic growth. This entails a profound transformation process which will require a lot of effort by all sectors of the economy and civil society organizations as well. Undoubtedly, civil society plays an important role in filling information gaps, improving mutual knowledge, and bringing citizens and different cultures, political and economic systems closer together. Now, I would like to provide a brief information about the civil society dialogue within the framework of the Turkey financial cooperation. The civil society dialogue between Turkey and the EU is a grant program developed by the Directorate for EU Affairs within the framework of the Instrument of Pre-Accession Assistance, IPA, which aims to ensure the highest level of contribution of civil society to the accession process. The program aims to bring together civil society organizations in Turkey and the EU around common issues to exchange knowledge and experience and to build a lasting dialogue. Since 2008, the program has provided approximately 50 million euro to nearly 400 projects carried out in various fields within 5 different periods, and has supported more than 650 dialogue partnerships established by civil society organizations in Turkey and the EU. The sixth phase of the program has started to be implemented in April 2021. Approximately 4.7 million euro grant support has been provided to 33 projects to be carried out by civil society organizations from Turkey and the EU on activities organized for awareness raising on Turkey and EU accession process, as well as cooperation, partnership, networking in the fields of relevant to the EU acquis. So having a history of longer than 10 years, civil society dialogue between Turkey and the EU is one of the most established grant programs towards the civil society in the scope of EU financial assistance. Supported civil society activities make the civil society heard on all issues related to our lives and produce the outcomes, pave the way for civil society to be possessive and to have a say in policymaking process. And the most important of all, dialogue establishes a bridge between Turkey and the EU for our common future, thus bringing Turkey closer to the EU with dialogue projects. Finally, as I conclude my remarks, I would like to express my belief that this project will create an important opportunity for establishing a sustained dialogue between Turkish and EU civil society organizations, private organizations, and public institutions. And I wish success to all parties involved in preparation and implementation of the project. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Elina and Mr. Kavik Burak Bural. We appreciate this. We feel responsibility. We're very proud to have been selected for this. We feel responsibility. We feel that as running this project together with our colleagues in IAD, and I'll give Mr. Kemal Demir Kol the floor right now. But what I wanted to say is that we feel that unless we leave something that's sustainable and continuing, we really would have failed. I think the important is that this project cannot and should not be one-off. This project should be leaving something behind, something that this is an impulse that makes things happen. Why? Because even since the Rio conference in '92, civil society has played a very important role in all the Rio conventions. They have been critical. In many cases, they represent the next generation. In many cases, they represent hands across borders between people that are concerned about our common future. So we hope that this is an opportunity for civil society in Turkey to understand better the European climate change policy, but also to understand how the EU civil society interacts with European institutions. Now, institutions are, especially in their arrangement and governance, took me a few years to understand it, how it works. But nevertheless, there are approaches and there are ways that people have used. I think this would be a learning from both sides. And we hope that is going to be a fruitful approach and a fruitful cooperation. I'd like to give a floor now, if very briefly, to Mr. Kemal Demirkol to also welcome you and speak about the project from the point of view of our Turkish partner. We have worked with Kemal and his colleagues, Nihan, on a number of other things until now, and we're very happy that we could cooperate on this project. Kemal, please.
Teşekkürler Andre. Herkese tekrar katılımları için teşekkür ediyorum. Projemizin açılış toplantısına hoş geldiniz. Umarım bu online yaptığımız son toplantı olur, online yapmak zorunda kaldığımız. Ve bir sonraki etkinlikleri yüz yüze yapma fırsatımız olur. Daha çok etkileşim ve daha çok sohbet etme fırsatımız da olur. Projemize destek olan, fon sağlayan Avrupa Birliği Başkanlığı'na teşekkür etmek istiyorum. Bugün vakit ayırıp katılan konuşmacılarımıza, katılımcılara ve değerli ortağımız ERCST'ye de tekrar teşekkür ediyorum. Bizim derneğimiz 2016 yılında kurulan bir dernek, iklim değişikliği konusunda farklı alanlarında çalışan uzmanlar tarafından kuruldu. Aramızda akademisyenler de var, uluslararası kuruluşlarda çalışan arkadaşlarımız da var. Nihayetinde amacımız özellikle ilgi alanlarımız ve uzmanlıklarımız doğrultusunda Türkiye'de bu konuda yapılan çalışmalara katkıda bulunmak ve mümkün olduğu kadar yenilikçi çalışmalar yapmak. Genel olarak su yönetimi, iklim riskleri, iklim ekonomisi, afet risk yönetimi gibi konularda çalışmalar yapıyor İklim Araştırmaları Derneği. Bu kapsamda da yine daha önce Avrupa Birliği Sivil Toplum Programı tarafından desteklenen süt sektöründe iklim riskleri, yine özel sektör, kamu ve yerel yönetimlerin sivil toplum kuruluşlarıyla işbirliğini arttırmaya yönelik devam eden projelerimiz var. Eğitim projeleri yapıyoruz. Bu projeyi de yaklaşık sanırım 2 yıla yakın bir süre önce ERCST ile geliştirmeye karar vermiştik. O zaman bu yeşil mutabakat konuları bu kadar popüler değildi. Ama son özellikle 6 ayda 1 yılda Türkiye'nin de gündeminde hızlı bir şekilde yer almaya başladı. Her gün, her hafta bu konuda birçok etkinlik görüyoruz. Bizim amacımız bu projede daha çok belki dezavantajlı grup olarak görebileceğimiz sivil toplum kuruluşlarının bu konudaki kapasitelerin geliştirilmesi, Avrupa Birliği'ndeki benzer kuruluşlarla diyaloğun artırılması ve biraz daha güçlendirilmesi. Hükümetler düzeyinde, kamu kurumları düzeyinde zaten devam eden birçok görüşme var. İş dünyası benzer şekilde hızlı bir şekilde bu konuda hazırlıklarını yapıyor. O yüzden biz de sivil toplum kuruluşlarını seçtik bu proje kapsamında. Amacımız da hem bizim derneğimizin, İklim Araştırmaları Derneği'nin bu konudaki kapasitesini arttırmak, hem de özellikle ERCST bu konuda çok yetkin ve deneyimli bir kuruluş Avrupa'da. Hem de onların bilgi ve deneyiminden faydalanarak Türkiye'deki diğer sivil toplum kuruluşlarıyla birlikte onların deneyiminden faydalanmak olacak. Birçok etkinlik yapacağız. Hem bilgi dokümanları oluşturacağız, online dokümanlar, web siteleri, hem de etkileşimi biraz daha artırmaya yönelik çalıştaylar yapacağız. Umuyorum ki projenin sonunda herkes için faydalı bir çalışma ve çıktılar elde edilir. Tekrar teşekkür ediyorum. Saygılarımla.
Thank you, Kemal. One thing that we are not what we would call quite an old hand, Turkey hand, but we're also not totally new. I mean, we have for the last couple of years, we have worked through the World Bank on the PMR project in helping Turkey on the strategy on Article 6. We're now with EBRD in the process of doing an evaluation of the impact of a CBAM on Turkey. So somehow we have managed to work with the government of Turkey and Turkish institutions. Unfortunately, it's all at a distance. unfortunately, it's all at a distance. We hope to rectify that, and we can only keep our fingers crossed. So again, I want to thank Ms. Badram and Mr. Bural for your interventions. And I would like now to move on to the more substantive part of a presentation, if you wish, in terms of getting into climate policy developments in the EU and European Green Deal. Now, Elena has mentioned that and has given us a tour d'horizon of what some of these activities are a part of the Green Deal. This is an initial kickoff of this program. So it is going to be an overview by Mr. Dariusz Dybka, who is a senior manager in the European Roundtable on Climate Change and Sustainable Transition, on climate change policy in the EU and the European Green Deal. So Dariusz, you have the floor. I think that, yes, now we are seeing the full screen. We have, as you may all see, we are being very careful with the signage, because this is a project where we are told to be very careful with the signage. So we recognize and appreciate the support and the cooperation of the government of Turkey and the European Union. Dariusz, you have the floor, please.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to everybody. Today we would like to present the overview, as Andrei mentioned, of the European Green Deal. I will lead you through the structure of the EGD, as we call it sometimes, through some background political process which we witness now in Brussels. What is the expected legislation? The recent developments, including adoption of EU climate law, and then the key files of the Green Deal package, which we expect in a week of time. Starting with the structure of the European Green Deal. This is a political project which commenced together with the current Commission, 2009-2024, and as it was published, it touches upon almost entire spectrum of the EU economy, starting from the climate targets up to the mentioned European Climate Pact. Together with the sustainable finance agenda and what we also observed, the initial idea and initial proposal of the European Green Deal was discussed through, but also slightly altered, or as some would say, upgraded through the last 2 years when we have the economic crisis and the health crisis. It also had an impact of the both legislation and the scope of the proposal. One thing from the history, basically, this is not the first package in the EU, but maybe this is the biggest of its magnitude so far. So just two examples. We had a 2020-20 package. So this is the one which brought emissions reductions 20% down, as well as renewables target, energy efficiency target. This is the one where we established emissions trading in Europe. And this is the one when we implemented the Kyoto Protocol in the global agreement, which forced us to implement the climate action into the EU legislation. Then the second package, which was recently concluded, was the Energy Union, with its architecture previous term of the Commission. And this is the one where EU obliged itself to reduce emissions at least 40% domestically. And this was initial intended national determined contribution, which was agreed by the EU leaders. And then it was presented as a contribution to the Paris Agreement. And now we discuss about the Fit for 55 agenda. So this is the package which the European Commission is preparing for the legislation in the EU, and we expect the second part of the current mandate of the current European Commission will be devoted to these negotiations. About the political process, it was many European councils devoted to discuss the European Green Deal and its shape, also touching upon the sectoral measures. But before it happened, in December 2019, it was agreed a climate neutrality by 2050. And this agreement of climate neutrality was submitted to the UNFCCC Convention as a contribution of the European Union. The second step, which was agreed a year later, was that the European Council agreed on a binding EU target of a net domestic reductions of at least 55%. This is the 2030 target. So it was brought from 40% to 55%, and this is a trigger to the legislation which will be presented next week. What happened recently, also in May this year, was that the EU leaders the European Commission to make the impact assessment of the Fit for 55 package slightly deeper. So basically, all the member states would like to be better informed about the impact of the Green Deal, as it has its key role. Then we try to understand what we're really expecting as when it comes to the impact of the legislation which we will see. One more aspect is the international aspect. The European Council also keeps the point in their conclusions that the commitments of the Paris Agreement of our international partners and the increase of ambition is expected ahead of the COP this year in Glasgow. Now, what we struggle, and to be honest, this is the key piece of the discussion in the European Union, or the virtual Brussels, as we call it at the moment, is all the legislative files which we expect. And some of them were mentioned already, also by Elina from the Commission. We see different elements of the European Green Deal which were already presented, including the agreed climate law. There was European industrial strategy. There is a circular economy action plan. There is a farm to fork strategy. This is few examples. I think also the important for us today was the EU adaptation strategy. So this is parts political framework, especially, which we already have. And now the second part of the package is the legislative files which we expect, and we will go deeper into that files. Just to mention the ETS, CBAM, so the border adjustment, energy taxation. This is all elements which all together they create the Fit for 55 package to be presented. And one more comment about this package is that this is coming in a very key point in time. So, so there is a lot of preparations, but also that the stakeholders so far, they could see different policies and different ideas, but only now we are entering into details. So this is fundamental. And also that European Commission now in July is presenting as many initiatives as during the last 1.5 years combined. So the previous slide was showing there is a number of legislative files which covers really entire economy and acquis, we would say, European acquis. One thing is what is expected from the EU and EU citizens and member states is to have a capacity to digest all of these changes. And this is a question mark for us as well, because digesting all this package will entail a lot of not only legislative process, but also adjusting the consumption patterns or behavior patterns, and the impact for sure will be for the next decade, but also long term. What we discuss now, looking into all these files of the Fit for 55, is what is the central piece, which which discussions, which negotiations will focus a key political debate. And one of two guesses is either we go to the border carbon adjustment as a central piece of this debate, or maybe it's a reform of the ETS. So few of the elements will focus as a central parts of a discussion now, according to our opinion, because now we go a little bit more into our view and comments on what the EU is discussing. Climate law. It was mentioned that this is a recent agreement which allowed now to other legislative pieces to be presented, and this is because the target for 2030 was agreed. And when we say co-legislators, we mean European Parliament and the EU Council, while the European Commission is presenting the proposal. And this is the same what will happen now with the other files. We will see the initial proposal from the European Commission, and then from other co-legislators, we will have a discussion and negotiations, which will finalize the process as a new law. With the climate law, few elements to highlight. 55% of the reduction target. There is also a promised new regulation on the land use change increase of carbon sinks. So this we will see in the future. There is a new body established, which is European Scientific Advisory Board on Climate Change. European Commission will also go for the intermediate target for the next decade, so for 2040, and will look into the developments of the global negotiations. So Paris Agreement and the global stocktake under the Paris Agreement is still key for the future EU legislation. And finally, indicative voluntary sectoral roadmaps towards achieving the Union's target will also see the light. So we will have more details into how the sectors should develop into the neutrality objective by 2050. The next thing I would like to describe is the border carbon adjustment discussion, and this is initially it was just BCAs. Now we talk and we expect to have a proposal on the border carbon adjustment mechanism in the EU. And this is the one which seeks to alleviate negative effects of asymmetrical climate policies. And we have EU legislation in place, and then we see how the other jurisdictions they react. That's why we go deeper into that discussion. The main objectives of BCA, of CBAM, we would say this is first to level the playing field in competitive markets. The second one is to prevent leakage of carbon emissions to jurisdictions with weaker policies. And the third one would be incentivize trade partners to strengthen their own climate efforts. So it has an internal and external aspect. What we did in ERCST, we looked deeply into methodology because we focus on these discussions already a year and a half, basically from the beginning of this commission. And in our analysis, what we see central is 8 design elements of the CBAM. And this is how we evaluate both our expected proposal and now the proposal which we will really see. This 8 elements is the coverage of trade flows, is the policy mechanism, geographic scope, it's how the sectors and product scope will look like, is the emission scope, it's how the embedded emissions will be determined, calculation of adjustment and use of revenues. So this is the 8 design elements, and we also looked into how we evaluate these elements. So that's how we build the matrix of a CBAM. And this criteria, basically, this is environmental benefit and competitive benefit, as well as technical administrative feasibility, legal feasibility, and finally political and diplomatic feasibility. So we also do a lot of outreach to see how the trade partners react, and partially we bring this discussion back to the EU to present these reactions. Now I think I will go to what we expect from the EU proposal. This is the one which most likely will happen next week. And from the informal, let's say, version of the document, so the one which is not yet published, we cannot say it will be exactly as it was internally discussed, but we see out of different issues already some probable proposals, and it goes to the scope of the sectors. So we talk about 4 or 5 main sectors, including cement, steel, electricity, aluminium, and most likely fertilizers, which will be covered in the first round. Then we have solutions about the scope. It's most likely scope 1 and 2. Question about the revenues, where it goes, if it goes to EU budget or elsewhere. Then we have few decisions to be made about the adjustment of the carbon leakage and about export rebates. The other parts is how the mechanism itself will look, and what we understand the notional ETS. It's how the system will be designed. This is a result of a long discussion, but this is how we understand the European Commission will propose the system to look like, which means the importers will have to surrender units each year equal to the emissions they import to the EU. That will be the new reality most likely in a couple of years. Then maybe one more example, that for the exclusion from the CBAM, we can, the latest version, it was that only countries that are part or are linked to the ETS, EU ETS, are exempted. So that would be pretty narrow version of exemption. And now this is before we go to the other files, one comment that the long discussion, it was a long discussion on how the CBAM can look like, and it involved a lot of stakeholders. So among the ERC-ST meetings which we held, there was numerous speakers, numerous participants from the civil society organizations, where they could pretty freely express what is their best interest. And this is few examples how they put it forward. So before the publication, we will see how it will play later, but before, they should say that CBAM should come along with the support of green transition in the EU for the industries. Or the stakeholders, they were saying that they believe the CBAM will improve carbon leakage protection. They had their own interests regarding the benchmark for imports, or for example, the scope of the CBAM. There was a big discussion over free allocation. So the current system as it is working, how it will be changed through the carbon border adjustment. And this is key element of the discussion we have in the EU. Also, stakeholders, they were saying, expressing their views, what should be the system, so what should be the policy mechanism. And finally, there was a preference for notional ETS as a solution. That's why we won't be that much surprised when the Commission will choose this option. After CBAM, I have 2 elements to mention about the EU ETS. So EU ETS, with its history already in the EU, is that it brought our emissions down more than 40%. So this is maybe part of the reality that we could put the target higher. The emissions have dropped more than twice as fast as the cap. So this is one of the graphs which is showing that we actually we have ETS in place, but we also have the emissions going down. And I think what is central at the moment is that industry has reduced its emissions by over 30% from the 1990, and now 20% from 2004. but they stagnated since 2013. So there was a big impulse at the beginning, and then it became less visible. So probably now we will see the next stage of impact of this policy. And first sector which really decarbonized is the electricity sector, the power sector. And now the industry sectors, they do their step as a next one, but we don't see yet maybe such a big impact. This moment in time, we have ETS review coming. So after work which the ETS already put into practice, now will be a big impact of the ETS reform, ETS review, which is also part of the political discussion in Brussels. And what we expect now is the higher ambition, change into the linear reduction factor, and potentially the cap rebasing. We see the overlap between the CBAM and the ETS, where choices for one legislative file they impact the other. Pretty central is the market stability reserve review, so the element which was introduced during the life of ETS to fix, some would say, the ETS, but now this is also part of the change. And crucial element of the ETS is how we expand the scope of the ETS. So we have electricity sector, we have industry, and now part of the discussion is how the transport sector, so both the aviation, maritime, and the road transport will be included in the ETS, and also buildings. So then the scope, the impact of the ETS will be significantly broadened. Next example of the EGD file, because we're still under the umbrella of the EGD, is the hydrogen. And for the hydrogen, we have the policy framework already in place. So both the both the Council of the EU and European Parliament already expressed their views, how they like, how they approach the European Commission strategy. But I think the next stage is that we will turn this into the law. So this is key element also of the discussion, that there is policy strategies where we can discuss them, and then they turn into the law where they binding. And for the hydrogen in particular, we have few. Apart from that, the hydrogen becomes central to the EU economy and decarbonization, but still we have few uncertainties which will be addressed during this next phase of negotiations. And then we will learn what is the role of the low carbon hydrogen, but also the green hydrogen. So what should be the balance, and what should be the transition between the two purposes or two applications of the hydrogen in the economy, as well as what other support is needed from the member states. And we're discussing the contracts for difference. We have changed into the state aid guidelines. We see hydrogen also being part of different legislative files, and this is again maybe to complicate, but this is not the intention. The EGD itself is a lot of files, but some of the topics will need to be addressed in different files. And for hydrogen, we can see that this is again the taxation element, the sustainable finance, the renewables. This is different places where this strategy will need to fit in order to build a coherent picture or coherent address of the topic. Mentioned already, so there will be, it's almost inevitable, and that's why it's easier to comment than to do it maybe from the institution side, but the sustainable finance also relates to almost all elements we mentioned earlier today. Because this is the source of funding into the EGD proposals. And to underline, maybe there is an international pillar for the sustainable finance, which is dedicated to link the public finance with other elements. And the initial funding, financial architecture, which was supposed to support the European Green Deal, was slightly broadened, or significantly broadened actually, during the recovery discussion. And now we have the Recovery and Resilience Facility in the EU. We have a just transition mechanism. We have traditional cohesion policy, so the one which was functioning earlier in the EU, providing for the cohesion between different regions, and we have InvestEU. On this, we are discussing different delegated acts which bring the European taxonomy regulation in place. And this is also my colleagues which were helping me to present today that there is a number of implementing acts, so the sub-legislation which is also being discussed in order to put this entire architecture in place. And as an example, this is the delegated act on mitigation and adaptation. There is one on agriculture, nuclear, and gas. There is few more still coming to fulfill the environmental objectives, and there was a big discussion on Article 8 of the taxonomy regulation. Without maybe going very deep into each of these files, it's important to know that all of them they are negotiated separately. So all of them, they have their both council formation and the parliament committee which deals with that. This is under umbrella of the European Green Deal, but then there is different expertise very often needed to deal with this file separately. As a subtopic, but pretty important to mention in this context, is also the just transition mechanism. Where we have three pillars of this mechanism, but this is about providing funding. And originally, the just transition having its source not only in the international discussion, but also in the EU, as we call it, Coal Regions in Transition platform, which was started allowing different parties, so again, governments, businesses, trade unions, NGOs, and think tanks, academia, to participate, to start the discussion, which then was turned into the legislative proposal. And now we have a Just Transition Fund, which provides the fresh money. And we have InvestEU, as well as the European Investment Bank, providing additional funding in order to finance the just transition of different regions, and also coal phase out. So this is useful to remember. And for the last to sum up the presentation, next week we should see the legislative package, which is 13 files, and then second part of or last part of the year there should be some extra proposals. So this is the work which will happen now in the EU, and which will keep us all occupied in our discussions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Arik. If you want to now go back to the normal screen. And I think that was a complete presentation of the various elements. Of course, each of these elements has its own particularities. They all have different reach. One that directly reflected upon was the financial sustainability and taxonomy. That one is going to have a huge impact on the kind of investments we're going to see and where people are going to be willing to put their money in. It's also may also have impact on investment from the EU in Turkey and the kind of investment that people will be seeking. The CBAM also is not something that is neutral. It's something that has elicited an enormous amount of attention in Turkey. people know about it. And we were reading today, for instance, that in other countries, we were reading about Morocco, that they are putting in place, or they are having introduced legislation to put in place some kind of a carbon taxation, probably related to CBAM. Obviously, I'm sure that the government of Turkey is watching and monitoring very closely how this is going to evolve and how that's going to impact Turkish business and their competitiveness and the trade relations with the EU. So all these are important elements, and none of them, or very few of them, will be local only to the EU. Most of them will have impact across the border, especially in an economy and to some degree society that it has very deep roots and very frequent exchanges as Turkey and the European Union. We will now go to asking for comments, first of all, from the Deputy Secretary General of TUSAID, Dr. Nursem Nunamoglu, and then we'll go on to Yasmin Oruku, and then we have Professor Ahmed Atil Ashiki. We seem to have some difficulty with that particular connection, but we shall see. Hopefully we can solve it. So Nursem, you have the floor, please. Thank you very much for taking the time, and we had the pleasure of speaking before, but it's good to see you again.
Thank you. I will start in English, but I have just checked that there are plenty of Turkish participants, and I will switch to English because I didn't know that there will be interpretation. Herkese merhabalar demek istiyorum öncelikle. Saygı ve sevgiyle selamlıyorum. Davet için tabii sonsuz teşekkürler. Hem eski kurumum olan AB Bakanlığı'na, Başkanlığı'na hem de ERCST'ye. Çok önemli bir konu için buradayız. Aslında biz Yeşil Mutabakat'ın her aşamasını, her sürecini çok yakından takip ediyoruz. Bir iş dünyası, sivil toplum kuruluşu olarak. Tabii ki çok zor bir dönemden geçiyoruz. Oldukça kritik dönemeçler diyebiliriz. Küresel rekabetin, değer zincirinin, ticaret ilişkilerinin yapısı değişiyor, çeşitleniyor. Ve iş yapma modelleri değişiyor aslında ve bu iş yapma modelleri daha fazla sürdürülebilirliği, daha fazla dijitalleşme kurallarını dikkate alıyor. Pandeminin şartlarına rağmen, ki bu büyük bir mutluluk verici, pandeminin tek güzel tarafı belki de bu. İklim değişikliği ve yeşil ekonomi konuları gündemden düşmek bir yana aslında gündemin daha üst sıralarına taşındı ve toparlanma planlarının da bir parçası oldu. Bu aslında bu farkındalık son derece önemli. Burada Avrupa Birliği'nin de önemli bir rolü olduğuna inanıyoruz gerçekten. Bir kere küresel iş ekosisteminin şekillendiren çok önemli aktörlerden bir tanesi Avrupa Birliği ve büyük bir kararlılıkla Avrupa Yeşil Mutabakatı'nı gündeme getirdi. Büyük bir kararlılıkla da uyguluyor ve tabii ki bu süreç AB'nin ticaret ilişkisinde olduğu, ekonomi ilişkilerde olduğu, bütün ülkeleri olduğu gibi Türkiye'yi de etkiliyor. Türkiye'de çok yoğun bir geçmişi var. Hem derin hem uzun. Hem şirketler arasında hem değer zincirleri arasında hem Gümrük Birliği'nden hem Türkiye'nin AB'ye entegrasyon döneminden kaynaklanan bir ciddi var, bağlantı var, ilişki var. Türkiye'nin en önemli ticaret partneri Avrupa Birliği. Yaklaşık yarısı Türkiye ihracatının Avrupa Birliği'ne. Türkiye'de AB açısından önemli bir ticaret paydaşı. En büyük 5. ticaret partneri hem ihracat hem ithalat olarak. Böyle baktığımızda bir de Yeşil Mutabakat'a bakmak gerekir. Yeşil Mutabakat'a baktığımızda çok geniş bir çerçeveyi, biraz önce sunumda da gördüğünüz gibi çok geniş bir çerçeveyi görüyoruz. Karbon nötr karbon emisyonları için bir hedef koyuyor ama bununla birlikte aslında ekonominin birçok bileşenini değiştiriyor ve mevzuat değişiklikleri aslında bütün politika alanları üzerinden yapılıyor. Ve değer zincirinin önemli bileşenlerine de sirayet ediyor bu değişiklikler. Bu nedenle aslında yeşil mütabakata uyum dediğimizde bir üretim metodundan ya da bir sektörel politikaya uyumdan ziyade çok boyutlu bir dönüşümden bahsediyoruz. İş modellerinin dönüşümünden bahsediyoruz. Yatırım planlarından bahsediyoruz. İstihdam ve R&D politikalarına kadar varan bir politikada dönüşümden bahsediyoruz. Bu süreç tabii ki sadece AB ile ticaret yapan, Türkiye örneğinde söylemek isterim bunu, Türk şirketlerinden sadece AB'ye ihracat yapanlarla alakalı bir mesele değil aslında. Türkiye-Avrupa Birliği'ndeki bu dönüşümü şöyle okumalı. Bu şirket, Avrupa'ya ticaret yapan bu şirketlerin değer zincirini sağlayan ve büyük ölçüde Türkiye'de KOBİ'lerden oluşan o ekonominin en önemli aktörlerini de dönüşümünü gerektiriyor. Bu nedenle son derece kritik önemde görüyoruz bu AB'nin bu yeni büyüme stratejisini ve bu stratejiye uyumlu bir büyüme modelini de Türkiye açısından stratejik önemde görüyoruz. Daha önce gelen sorularda vardı, yeşil mütabakatın hangi konuları daha önemli sizce? Hepsi. Şu ana kadar şekillenenlerde biraz daha resmi, daha iyi görüyoruz. Ama şekillenmekte olanlar da önem kazanacak. Lakin şu anda baktığımızda iş dünyası açısından en fazla odaklanmanın olduğu alanlar sınırda karbon düzenlemesi, döngüsel ekonomi eylem planı, AB'nin enerji stratejileri, enerji dönüşüm stratejileri ve dijitalleşme çerçevesini oluşturan düzenlemeler. Bunlar iş dünyası için çok önemli. Biraz bunlara yoğunlaşarak devam edeceğim konuşmamda. Tabii ekonomik kalkınmanın sürdürülebilirliği, bu yeni iklim ve yeni iş yapma dünyasında hem ekonomik kalkınmanın sürdürülebilirliği hem uluslararası rekabetçilik aslında hiçbir şeyi yapmamayı büyük bir risk olarak ortaya getiriyor. Bir şey yapmalısınız. Bu çok net, bunu gördük. Ve TÜSİAD olarak da bir iş dünyası sivil toplum kuruluşu olarak bütün çalışmalarımızı aslında bu değerlendirmelerimizi yoğunlaştırma üzerine oluşturduk. Çok yakın bir zamanda çok değerli 3 hocamız da, Erinç hocam aramızda gördüğüm kadarıyla, Ahmet hocam inşallah olacak aramızda ve Sevil hocamızla bu sene, daha doğrusu Eylül 2020'de bir çalışma gerçekleştirdik. Yeni iklim rejimini hem Paris Anlaşması'nı hem AB'nin öngörülen sınırda karbon düzenlemesini dikkate alarak bir çalışma gerçekleştirdik. Türkiye'ye ne getirecek? Ve aslında bu rapor beklentilerimizi tam da beklendiğimiz etkiyi yarattı, ilgiyi yarattı. Bu büyük bir aslında mutluluk, amacına ulaştı çünkü rapor. Birçok kurum ve kuruluş tarafından referans alınan, iklim değişikliği ile ilgili, Paris Anlaşması ile ilgili tartışmalara ya da Avrupa Yeşil Mütabakatı ile ilgili bilinçlenme süreçlerine çok referans oldu. Bu anlamda amacını yerine getirdiğini düşünmekle birlikte bir çıktısını burada da paylaşmak istiyorum. Bu çalışma bize aslında AB'nin çevresel hedefleri, Yeşil Mütabakat'ın değerlerine uygun bir dönüşümü Türkiye'de de gerçekleştirirsek, karbon fiyatlandırması dahil olmak üzere, bu yöndeki bir dönüşüm senaryosunun aslında dönüşmeme senaryosundan çok çok daha fazla GDP'de pozitif etki yaratacağını gösterdi. Dönüşmemede bir pozitif etki olmuyor. Onu yanlış ifade etmek istemem. Ama bu dönüşümü Türkiye'de gerçekleştirmek gerçekten GDP'de pozitif yönde ayrıştıran en önemli parametre. Tabii biz bütün bu bilgilerden hareketle Paris Anlaşması'nın COP26 öncesi ratifiye edilmesi konusunda talebimizi ilgili politika yapıcılar nezdinde dile getirdik. Aynı zamanda bir yol haritası, karbon nötr hedefi belirlemiş. 2050 yılında karbon nötr hedefi, 2050 yılına yönelik bir karbon nötr hedef belirleyen bir yol haritasının da Türkiye tarafından hazırlanması gerektiğine dikkat çektik. Bunu şu nedenle önemli görüyoruz. Bir kere iklim açısından evet kuşkusuz önemli. Ancak bir o kadar da yeşil dönüşümü gerçekleştirmek için yatırım ortamının ihtiyaç duyduğu öngörülebilirlik, finansmana erişimle ilgili bir çerçeve çizmesi gibi somut uygulamada son derece geçerli olacak mesajları verecek bir yol haritasına Türkiye'de ihtiyaç var ve bunun için hedefleri konmuş, eylemleri uygulanabilir şekilde, tamamlayıcı şekilde, uyumlu şekilde politikalar arasında uyum sağlayarak oluşturulmuş ama da her şeyden önce yine önceki sunumda söylendiği gibi bilimsel temellerin de göz önünde alındığı bir yol haritasına ihtiyaç olduğunu dile getirdik. Tabii sanayi ve iş dünyası birçok çalışma yapıyor. Kamu birçok destek mekanizmasını seferber etti. Bu aslında şunu sağladı. Belli ölçüde bir iyileşme var ama aslında yapılması gereken çok daha fazla şey var. Çok üst seviyelerde yenilenebilir enerji potansiyeli var, enerji verimliliği potansiyeli var. Bunların hayata geçirilmesi için yapılabilecek adımlar var. Bunların hızlandırılabilmesi için kamunun sağlayacağı desteklerin çok büyük bir itici bir rolü olacak. Bu yönde atılacak adımlar için bu yol haritasını aslında biraz da bu yönde atılacak adımlar için de hızlandırıcı görüyoruz. Neticede iklim adına ya da yeşil mutabakat adına yapılacak her düzenlemenin merkezinde aslında enerjinin dönüşümü olacak. Bu alanları bu nedenle önceliklendiriyoruz ve aslında umutluyuz da. 2018 yılında yaptığımız bir başka çalışmada sürdürülebilir gelecek için sürdürülebilir enerji raporumuzda biz aslında şunu da gördük. Çeşitli model çalışmaları yapıldı ve sürdürülebilirlik senaryosunun çalışıldığı modelde dijital, 3D diye tarifliyoruz. Dijital, dağıtık ve dekarbonize perspektifte yapılan düzenlemelerle oluşacak bir dönüşümün ve bir ekonomik gelişimin ilave çok ciddi bir yine GDP üzerinde ilave etkisi olacağı yönünde model sonuçları var. Bunlar umut verici. Bu nedenle biz daha etkili destek mekanizmalarıyla hem enerji verimliliğini arttırıcı önlemleri, piyasa mekanizmalarıyla daha kullanılabilirliğini arttırıcı ya da yenilenebilir enerjinin en maksimum seviyede kullanılmasına yönelik düzenleyici çerçevenin oluşturulmasını önemli görüyoruz. Bu yönde de öneriler geliştiriyoruz. Tabii yeşil mutabakatın bir diğer önemli unsuru iş dünyası açısından döngüsel ekonomi. Bu Türkiye gibi kaynakları kısıtlı ve ne kadar olumsuz örneğini son dönemde fazla yaşadığımız atık yönetimi konusunun çok önemli olduğu bir perspektifte biz de bu konuyu çok önemli görüyoruz. Bu amaçla da bir çalışma gerçekleştirdik. O daha yeni yayınlandı Haziran ayında. AB'nin döngüsel ekonomi eylem planının Türk mevzuatıyla bir karşılaştırmasını yaptık. Tabii ki bugün itibariyle oluşan AB düzenlemelerine göre ve bu bize şunu gösterdi aslında. Evet, mevcut mevzuatta ciddi bir iyileştirme, uyumlaştırma ihtiyacı var. Ama aslında bence daha da çarpıcı olan bu raporun gösterdiği AB düzenlemeleriyle Türkiye'deki döngüsel ekonomiye yönelik düzenlemelerin aslında ruhunda bir ayrışma var. O politikaların ve stratejilerin AB döngüsel ekonomi eylem planındaki o kurgu gözetilerek ciddi anlamda dönüştürülmesi ihtiyacı var. Tabii yeşil mutabakatın en önemli unsurlarını konuşurken bir şeyleri daha konuşmak lazım. İkiz büyüme modeli var Avrupa Birliği'nin ve bunun etkilerini, dijital kısmın etkilerini aslında yeşil kısımda da görüyoruz. Biz bunu da döngüsel ekonomide de, sınırda karbon düzenlemesinde de çok yakından hissediyoruz zaten. Bu dijital dönüşümü mutlak ve mutlak, yani diğerlerinden daha az önemli değil, mutlak ve mutlak bir şekilde bir an önce gerçekleştirmek gerekiyor. Bu siber güvenlikten GDPR'a, dijital altyapının altyapıya yönelik yatırımlara kadar bir perspektifi ortaya koyuyor. Bu tabii bizi başka bir kısıta götürüyor. Uyumlu, kapsamlı, doğru analizlerle üretilmiş veri çok önemli. Türkiye'de bu alana da bir iyileştirme alanı olarak bakmak gerekiyor. Tabii bu süreçlerde iş dünyasının, kamunun çok yakın bir işbirliği, sinerjisi çok önemli. Bu alan içerisinde finansman çok belirleyici Türkiye açısından da. Yeşil yatırımın ve hem kamu hem özel sektör tarafından yeşil yatırımın desteklenmesi çok kritik bir alan. Burada MDB'leri, çok taraflı bankaları çok kritik bir rolde görüyoruz. Özel sektörün bu yeşil yatırımlar yönünde finansmanında, ama bir önemli mekanizmada AB sürecinde, AB'nin bu yeşil mutabakat sürecinde Just Transition üzerine ayrılan kaynakları duyduk. Burada Türkiye'nin de bu kaynaklara erişebilmesi, AB ile ekonomik entegrasyonu, Gümrük Birliği'nden de gelen birlikteliği olan Türkiye'nin ve AB'nin diğer ekonomik aktörlerinin aslında ilişkide olduğu diğer ülkelerin de aynı mantıkla bu mekanizmalara, yeşil dönüşüm gerçekleştirme yönündeki mekanizmalara erişimi, ARGE programlarına, Horizon Europe gibi ARGE programlarına en etkin şekilde katılımı mutlak ve mutlak bu süreci hızlandıracaktır. Buradaki en önemli hususlardan bir tanesi aslında bütün paydaşların bir eşgüdüm içinde çalışması ve çalışmalarını da buna göre şekillendirmesi. Biz TÜSİAD olarak bütün çalışmalara aslında katkı vermeye çalışıyoruz. Ama bugünkü etkinliğin de bir aradığı soru olarak sivil toplum kuruluşları neye ihtiyaç duyar ya da sivil toplum kuruluşlarının rolü nedir diye baktığımızda ben buna cevabı biz neler yapıyoruz, nerelerde ihtiyaç gördük ve çalışmalarımızı hangi eksende oluşturduk diye bir bilgilendirmeyle cevaplamış olayım. Biz tabii ki hem aslında yeşil mutabakatın, yeşil dönüşümün, karbon nötr bir kalkınma modeline geçişin savunuculuğunu yapıyoruz TÜSİAD olarak. Uzunca bir süredir bunu yapıyoruz aslında. 2017'de ilk yönetim kurulunun aldığı bir kararla biz iklim tutumumuzu açıkladık ve düşük karbonlu kalkınmaya Türkiye'nin geçmesi talebimizi paylaştık politika yapıcılarla. Şimdi bunu daha da ileriye götürdük. Biraz önce bahsettiğim gibi karbon nötr hedefi olan bir süreç arzu ediyoruz ülkemizde. Bunu yapmak için aslında çok yoğun bir şekilde de içeride çalışmalarımızı sürdürüyoruz. Spesifik olarak Avrupa Yeşil Mutabakatı ile ilgili bir grup oluşturduk. Ayrıca Çevre ve İklim Değişikliği Çalışma Grubu da var. Ama bu iki gruptan bağımsız olarak bütün yuvarlak masalar ve çalışma grupları bütün çalışmalarının içine yeşil mutabakatı ve iklimle ilgili kaygıları alıyorlar ve bunları çalışma planlarının bir parçası yapıyorlar. Bu süreçte başka neler yapıyoruz? Belki bu sivil toplum kuruluşlarının ihtiyaçları ve beklentileri yönündeki değerlendirmelere bir çerçeve olması için paylaşabileceğim son sözlerim. Her ay düzenli olarak üyelerimizle bu uluslararası camiada gerçekleşen gelişmeleri bir kere derin bir şekilde istişare ediyoruz. Business Europe'un üyesi olduğumuz için orada karşılıklı bir bilgilendirme ve karşılıklı aslında bir görüş oluşturma süreci de var. Bunun yanı sıra kamu kurumlarımızla, başta Ticaret Bakanlığı olmak üzere çok yakın bir ilişki içerisindeyiz. Bakanlığın hazırlamış olduğu o eylem planının hayata geçmesini, daha da genişlemesini ve derinlemesini çok önemli görüyoruz. Yine Çevre Bakanlığı'nın açıkladığı ve çalışmalarına başlayacağını açıkladığı iklim değişikliğiyle mücadele yol haritasını da çok önemli bir ihtiyaç olarak görüyoruz. Bu kurumlarla bu ilişkilerimiz var, yurt dışındaki paydaşlarımızla ve muhataplarımızla ilişkilerimiz var. Ayrıca farkındalığı arttırmak ve iyi uygulamaları paylaşmak için her ay düzenli olarak bu alanda gelişme kaydetmiş, yeşil dönüşümle alakalı, karbon azaltımıyla alakalı stratejisi olan şirketlerimizin en üst düzey yetkilileriyle bir toplantı dizisi gerçekleştiriyoruz. Bu bizim bütün üyelerimize ve tabii ki dışarıdan katılan katılımcılara ilham verici olma özelliği de taşıyor. Ve bir anlamda bu kapasite geliştirmeden hangi konular daha önceliklendirilebilir buna yönelik ipuçlarını da taşıyor. Ve tabii ki en son söyleyeceğim ama en önem verdiğimiz konulardan biri de bu. TÜSİAD, Avrupa Birliği'nin Yeşil Mütabakat sürecinde oluşturduğu kamu istişare sürecine tutum belgeleriyle de doğrudan katkı vermeye çalışıyor. Türk iş dünyasının beklentileri, Türk iş dünyasının öneri ve görüşlerini de o tarafa aktarıyor. Tabii bütün bu süreçlerde biz kamunun politika yapma süreçlerine mümkün olduğu mertebede katkıda vermeye çalışıyoruz. Ben teşekkür ederim. Aktarabileceklerim şimdilik bu kadar. Sorular olursa da memnuniyetle yardımcı olmaya çalışacağım.
Thank you very much, Nursen. That was a very complete outline, and your relation and the fact that you work with Business Europe is certainly puts you in a position very much in understanding and having an organic relationship with people that are deeply involved in policy or trying to address policy formulation inside the EU. Now, I'm glad to see that Professor Ashiki has managed to reach us. So before we lose him, I will go. Yasmin, I don't know what you're going to say to me, but I'll go in the order that I have here. Unless you tell me that you have something that that is pressing. If not, I'll go in the order that I have here. Is that okay? Or you have something? Is that fine?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Go.
Yes.
Thank you. So go ahead, please. Ahmet, happy to have you.
Okay, thank you very much. It's very nice to see you all. In fact, I was not expecting to be able to connect. There is a whole university-wide infrastructural, I think, connection problem, but now it seems to be resolved. I have actually prepared a PowerPoint slide, so let me share it with you so that maybe...
Yes,
okay.
please go ahead.
You all see it, right?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so I will just briefly underline some of the important aspects of the European Green Deal and its effect on the Turkish economy, in fact. So I'm sure you already mentioned that the European Green Deal is not only a kind of ecological program, but also very strong economic and social aspects as well. So this is point number one. And secondly, it's going to affect the Turkish economy through carbon border adjustment mechanism and the circular economy action plan. So these are the two channels that we have to pay attention to. Europe is a very important market tool. Almost half of our Turkish exports are going to EU market. So this is not a market that we can forget about. So these are the CBAM regulations. Most likely it's going to be, I think, resolved in the mid-July, but at least it's going to cover the electricity and basic metals, aluminum, cement, and some of the chemical products, scope 1 and scope 2 emissions. So the free allocation will be granted to non-EU producers as well. So the revenues will go to the EU budget rather than sending back to the paying country. So this is, I think, a controversial issue. So these are, let me share you with the analysis, the results of the analysis we made for TÜSİAD report that we published in September 2020. In that report, we actually tried to calculate the risk of having an inactive climate policy, and on the other hand, the opportunities attached to be a party of the Paris Agreement. So, you know, this cost-benefit analysis. What if, what we can gain by having an active climate policy, or what we can lose if we don't, okay? So these are the sectoral greenhouse gas emissions. Actually, if you look at the electricity sector, is 1/3 of the total greenhouse gas emissions. So this is going to be a huge risk for the Turkish exporters who rely on electricity as energy source, because their scope 2 will be scope 2 carbon bill will be very high due to this high greenhouse gas intense electricity production in Turkey. So this is one thing that we need to pay attention to. I calculated the CBAM cost, sectoral CBAM costs, like assuming that the price of carbon is 50 euro per ton. And here you see these 4 sectors which are under the CBAM regulation in the transitional period: chemicals, cement, non-metallic minerals, in fact, iron and steel, and electricity. So just the cement industry will have to pay like 273 million euros for the exports sent to the EU market. This is annual costs. These are huge costs. If you calculate tax rate, if you kind of divide it to the export revenues earned, it corresponds to, for the cement industry, it corresponds to 21.3% of tax. Okay, so this is kind of a de facto tax. Electricity is 17%. I also did some analysis for the cement producers. It's actually, these are the earlier findings. These findings are through a general input-output methodology. But when the CBAM take into effect, it's going to measure the greenhouse gases at the plant level. Okay, so we need plant level data, in fact, for a clean, let's say, concrete carbon costs. And this is what I did for the cement industry. This association gave me the plant level data of 3 plants, cement factories. And here you see for every ton of cement exports, 10 euros, around 10 euros per ton of cement should be paid at the EU border. So these are quite extensive numbers. I also do some back on the envelope actually estimations. So these 4 sectors, I calculated their scope 1 and scope 2 emissions and also embedded in their EU 28 exports. So these 4 sectors exports, they have to pay like 580 million euros, okay? And then I asked the following question: what if we set up a Turkish ETS system in Turkey and price the carbon as like 50 euros, as it is the case in ETS, okay, Euro ETS? How much money we can generate? I calculated this around 13 billion euros annually in these 6 energy intensive sectors. These 13 billion euros, which are collected from the Turkish manufacturers, can be reallocated to the sectors themselves, can be returned to them as well, under the condition of green transformation. So that is my argument. I mean, rather than paying this 580 million euros to Europe, we can set up a national emission trading system in Turkey and retain this money in Turkey. Okay, it's 13 billion euros annually. It's a big number, I know. It's a big resource, but with the aid of the state, I think this green transformation can be managed. So this, otherwise, I mean, this greenhouse gas intensity of Turkish sectors is not only risky for the export revenues, but also it has some employment effects as well. Because if the sectoral exports decreases, then it has some negative employment effects. So I calculated these numbers, the sectoral employment actually. In the non-metallic minerals, we, as of 2019, 281,000 people are working. In total, we have 1.125 million people working in these sectors, in this high greenhouse gas intensive sectors. I also calculated the number of jobs created by the EU exports of these 6 sectors. This is around 400,000. So imagine if due to CBAM, the sectoral exports of Turkey fall by 10%, then 40,000 people will lose job. Okay, so we have to think about this. And like as a civil society, I think this is one thing that the labor trade unions should concern about, because it's going to affect the employment level in Turkey as well. And the last point I want to make is that it is not going to be kind of EU specific thing. I think a new global climate regime is maturing. So not only in Europe, but also we see the similar patterns in USA, in China and Japan. As you know, China and Japan also declared their carbon neutral targets as like 2060. So it is going to affect everything, I think. So the effects will not be limited to the EU market, but to the it will go across the other markets as well. So for me is that what I think is that like adopting this global climate regime is a good idea for Turkey. In order to do so, Turkey needs to revise its INDC target that reflects the true responsibility of Turkey. This is number one thing. Secondly, we need to ratify the Paris Climate Agreement at the Parliament. This is going to show the kind of sincerity of the Turkish government, and it will also affect its kind of diplomatic power, let's say, in the international negotiations as well. As of now, Turkey is one of the very few countries that haven't ratified the agreement. We need to do it, I think, before the COP summit in this autumn. Also, rather than kind of like sending this 600 million euros annually to EU, we can keep this money in Turkey by instituting a ETS-linked carbon pricing scheme in Turkey. So this is what I would like to share with you. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. It will be interesting once we also complete our work on the evaluation and compare numbers. That would be certainly a fascinating story. Somebody, hopefully hopefully we'll also find a reason to reconcile those numbers, but we shall see. It will not be long. Yasmin, it's always a pleasure to see old friends, and probably in the Turkish side is the one that I've known for the longest. So you have the floor, and thank you for the patience.
Thank you, Andre. I think you will need to put all the findings of these impacts on a paper and see what is the, adjusted economic impact on Turkish economy of the recent developments on the EU side. So thank you very much. Hello, everyone. I'm excited to be here with you today. I really enjoyed some of the presentation very much, particularly because these were very informative, also summarizing what's happening in the EU, and of course, which helps me realize what can happen globally at the global scale as well, because the main discussion maybe should be focused on what will be the impacts overall on recent EU policies on the globe, and we see some other countries also planning to take some action on measures like carbon border tax adjustment. Well, climate remains an area of both great uncertainty and tremendous opportunity for Turkey too, as for any other country. So far, Turkey has made an uneven progress in climate and environment efforts, I must say. On one hand, there has been important progress in the electricity and energy field. For example, on January 24, wind generation has reached an all-time high at 21%, which is really, really huge and really unprecedented. Just behind natural gas, actually, at 26%. On the other hand, as you all know, the shores of Istanbul continue to be devastated by marine mucilage caused by untreated wastewater discharge, threatening the already fragile ecosystem of Marmara Sea, which is very precious ecosystem. These two examples show us these, examples remain on the opposite sides of the spectrum, and they are actually a testament to the impact of policymaking, and the policymaking, when it's done right, you get the good results. At the World Bank, we strongly believe that economies can be better climate proofed with well-designed climate policies. In the last 5 years, World Bank committed about $83 billion in climate-related investments globally. And it's with great pleasure that I can report that the World Bank Group is currently the highest multilateral funder of climate investments in developing countries. And in Turkey, where our climate co-benefits since 2019 have reached 55% of the lending, and the lending reached $2.5 billion. We continue to further bolster our climate efforts in Turkey through including climate and disaster risk screening, accounting greenhouse gas emissions, and applying a shadow price of carbon and economic analysis of the projects for so long, for over 10 years right now. It's important here to note that any climate policy affects all parts of the economy and, of course, the social life, and that we often see and expect an initial wave of uncertainty will be experienced in the market. So I was also delighted to hear Nushen Hanım, because she was also reflecting the private sector side of the picture, where the sector is very high, trying to be prepared. So I'm really happy to see this proactive approach from the sectors as well in meeting the challenges and the uncertainty. For Turkey, we see that especially since COP21, there has been uncertainty born from lack of action, especially on Paris Agreement, but also on specific climate policies. And we also see pressure on Turkey continues to mount to reveal a clear roadmap and emission reduction targets. And these, of course, will need to be updated because there has been so many developments in especially energy intensive sectors since the last one was prepared long ago. But this uncertainty creates some cautiousness in the long-term investments by the private sector. And this in turn raises questions on long-term paths of sustainability and green recovery of Turkey. So there is a close link and there is a gap of putting a long-term view of Turkey's future that needs to be addressed. As discussed today, one such area of critical uncertainty is European Green Deal. Turkey is part of the customs union, as you know, since 1999, and EU's 5th largest trade partner. Turkish exports reached to 90 billion USD annually. This is very serious, and it's also serious that 6 out of 10 of Turkey's top 10 trade partners are EU member countries. Given that emission-intensive sectors such as iron and steel, cement, textile, and whatnot account for around 50% of Turkey's export, the full implementation of the CBAM and a possible pricing adjustments to Turkish goods entering the EU market will have massive implications for the future, not only on the trade relations, but also on the stability of the Turkish economy and development at large. A few years ago, there was a study under PMR, and it found like the carbon tax adjustment would report to some 2.5% of the national income, which is I think very considerable. These numbers are going to be, of course, and are being updated, and we'll see more, to the point at the sectoral level studies too. But it's important to realize, I think, maybe there's also a dilemma that there may be an opportunity for Turkey to increase its access to EU markets by decarbonizing key value chains quicker than competitor countries. This is a big opportunity because the more Turkish businesses reduce their emissions intensity, the more competitive they will be in European markets, but also globally. CBAM may be seen as an opportunity to accelerate economic transformation and maximize the trade, jobs, and fiscal outcomes. But also, importantly, this discussion is not just about the EU, as I mentioned. Most leading economies globally are considering similar green plans, and this shift is going to definitely affect the trade globally. Of course, for Turkey, I think the financing of this transition will be crucial, and it would need to be spelled out very clearly how much financing would be there. But for that, we need some targets and a long-term plan. And as a person working in international financing institution, I don't see any good project, any low carbon project in Turkey, difficulty accessing financing. That is for sure. So I think the financing is already there. All we need is the commitment. Maybe I can go over some of our activities in Turkey. We've been working in close cooperation with the government of Turkey, as many of you know, through Partnership for Market Readiness program. This is actually mainly aiming to put a price to carbon emissions. The program overall provided funding and technical assistance to 22 other countries, covering 46% of the global GHG emissions. Of course, all of them almost from developing countries. Turkey concluded the first phase in 2018 and included some of the preliminary, this project included some of the preliminary evaluations assessments and pilot studies on Turkey's policy options on carbon pricing, market-based emission reductions, possible impact on potential carbon pricing on the economy. The second phase, completed early this year, delivered meticulously developed infrastructure and legal framework for carbon pricing tailored specifically for Turkey. This included a draft climate law and future emission trading system legislation. The project enjoys strong interest from key stakeholders. I see many familiar faces already here. This included ministries, public-private institutions, universities, CSOs, engineers, experts, lawyers, and whatnot. And this, of course, creates a lot of capacity in the country. It's good to also mention PMR program is being succeeded by program for markets implementation, and Turkey has already put an expression of interest, and World Bank is now evaluating the EOEs, and actually Turkey is expected to be approved for the next phase, because the basic policy action would be to operationalize these climate legislation and pilot some of the ETS sectors already from next years. But important thing about PMI in Turkey's proposal is that Turkey will run some campaigns on climate awareness raising. And I think this is very important because the stakeholder engagement and participatory approaches are so much important, creating some pressure on the government and pressure on the industry and private sector. So we really give utmost importance to such actions, especially on awareness raising. And why carbon pricing would be needed, because you need some people's support, especially citizen support, for such actions to be successful in the long term. However, there remains much work as we move forward to a more carbon neutral world. PMR is a good example of how important international cooperation can be in decisive and collective action for climate change. But as previous speakers also mentioned, this is really a big challenge for all the sectors, countries, and people. Maybe just a few summary, actually a little summary on what World Bank has been doing, especially in Turkey. Maybe I have to state that since 1990s, World Bank provided about $7 billion to Turkey's energy sector, initiated energy efficiency and renewable energy markets starting from 2004. Now continues with increased focus on clean and sustainable energy, and also looking at development of relevant policy environments in parallel with the global developments. Our work include offshore wind, battery storage, buildings energy efficiency, building resilience, distributed solar, geothermal. It's very wide sector of interventions we have in Turkey. We are now expanding our green analytical and advisory programs in the areas of energy transition with Ministry of Energy, but also working on sustainable recovery and green growth, and custom union modernization and implications of the EU Green Deal as well, and all aimed at actually informing policy making for nationwide impacts. So I think it will really be important to put all the studies together and have a good look over them. We also work on just energy transition, which will be looking at jobs, disadvantaged people, inclusion, and change in livelihoods as a result of achieving clean energy transition. This includes transition from coal. civil society will play a pivotal role in transition to low carbon economy. And we have seen this transformational impact in some energy efficiency and renewable energy campaigns we have run with IPA financing in the last few years. So I think projects as PMR and EU, Turkey Climate Policy Dialogue, which today's event is a part of, will help us to move to a greener future in Turkey. We hope our collective efforts will continue to lay the foundation for a strong domestic climate policy in Turkey, increase understanding of Turkey from the EU side as well, and also position the country as a good practice country in the region. Hopefully, we'll see Turkey exporting this knowledge elsewhere in the region and maybe even globally. So as the World Bank, we are committed to our strong partnership with Turkey in achieving substantial institutional reforms and development of these reports. And we are open to cooperate with our counterparts to achieve good results. Thank you.
Thank you, Yasmin. It's been a quite fascinating and intense pieces of information. We're kind of short of time, but I think that both Yasmin and Hussein and Ahmed have made some very complete presentations. If you're reacting to some degree to what Darius Dipka had mentioned. Now, what I wanted is I'm asking people to raise their little electronic hands if there are any question and comments. This was a lot of information, and this is the kickoff meeting. But I wanted to see whether there were any comments or questions from our side, from the audience side. So please, and I will give you the floor if you raise your hand. I will give you the floor. From our point of view, again, we will share once we finalize this project on the impact of CBAM on Turkey. We certainly will present and hope that Ahmed and others will join us in that discussion. Also, we know the work that the World Bank is doing from our point of view, so the Article 6 and the strategy on Article 6, which is an important element because it will have to somehow link to a domestic carbon pricing as well. So that is something that I know that many people in Turkey are preoccupied with, but also the fact that this avalanche of legislation, which seems to change the world, is coming in the EU, which, as Yasmin mentioned, is a very big partner, economic partner for the EU, but not only economic, it's a neighbor, and we have strong ties and both family and economic ties and cultural ties. So all this makes this dialogue very important. It's more difficult, I accept that to do this dialogue via Zoom, because the human dimension kind of lacks in this thing. No matter how much we got used to it, it's still not there. We still want to see people, but we'll have to do with this particular event as best as we can. Again, I invite people to raise their hands electronically if there are any questions. If not, Ahmed, if I can ask you a question, what was the reaction? I mean, you presented this as this information. So the cement industry will take a certain, obviously some, this was done for two sides, but also some of these numbers were presented, the industry had their own reaction, but was there a broader reaction from other institutions in Turkey to these numbers? Because, again, I can't tell you whether our numbers coincide or not, or in the same ballpark figure, but had there been reaction from others in Turkey to the study? Because it's important. Once people see numbers, they get mobilized.
Yeah, in fact, I mean, in the Turkish society, of course, the business people are kind of leading the discussion. They are the ones, and for very good reason, they are the ones who are alarmed, actually, once they hear the... I mean, but they were late, I should say that. Like from 2010, I remember that many people, many scholars in Turkey, experts, started to warn the Turkish business industries that about the high carbon intensity of production, and also kind of call the government to take some actions. But unfortunately, we couldn't make our voices heard, neither at the business community nor in the governmental bureaucracy. And now, I mean, we hit the wall right now. Nevertheless, it is late, but I mean, there is nothing to do but to get to an action. And as I said in my presentation, this PMR thing, I mean, we have been in contact with the World Bank since 2014, if I'm not wrong, on instituting this national emission trading system. So, like, what happened? I don't understand. I mean, what are we waiting as a country, right? So I know that it's going to be costly for some sectors in Turkey, but we have to think the common benefits, the common benefit of the Turkish public in general. So we cannot go with this emission intensity. It is going to have huge employment effects in these sectors and the other sectors as well. So yeah, it's a long answer to your question.
Very well, thank you very much. Just wanted to, I want to again ask people any last comment, because we're not getting reaction. So Nursen or Yasmin, any final thoughts? I mean, again, this has been an opening discussion. I think that we made an introduction and got people to a little bit, some of them to say that, and you guys know this stuff because you work with Business Europe. Ahmed, your organization also preoccupied, but not everybody is into this, much more than they were in the past, but not everybody is into this to the same level. Any final remarks, any final thoughts, things that maybe we should think about besides getting people together on a face-to-face basis? Anything else any final thoughts from your side?
I want to say a couple of things just as a conclusion. Pardon. Yes, and there are plenty of issues that should be done for the EU and Turkey relation to strengthen the relation. And the mandate received very recently for the modernization of the customs union will bring another momentum between Turkey, which is a candidate country to the EU, and Turkey and between Turkey and the EU. And what we can focus on this relation or this modernization process of the customs union also will accelerate the focus on Green Deal issues. And this is our expectation, and this is our belief that high degree of economic integration of Turkey, and Turkey we choose the green economy in their development model, definitely will be a process for both parties, because it will also facilitate smooth functioning of green supply chains as well. And this will be a kind of win-win economic and environmental perspective for both sides. And whatever we do here in Turkey, in line with the EU Green Deal, and the contribution and the support received by the EU side, of course, will be beneficial for both parties. We have very deep relations, and we still have a bright future. This is what I would like to believe as a candidate country, as a member of candidate country, and as a person who worked a lot in this process. We should, both sides should keep in mind the mutual benefits. Thank you.
Thank you, Nursen. And Yasmin?
Maybe I should reiterate the role of civil society, private sector, and role of people in the street in all these actions, climate actions especially. It's very important. That's why I really welcome this project. And I think it's really good to see you, Andre, and also the Turkish team as well, because you have experience on the international implications of any actions that could happen in Turkey. You have a broader view over, as a group, of course, people together of any action, and what would be understood from the other side is, it's kind of your profession. So I think this will be very helpful, and I will be following this project implementation with interest. Thank you very much.
Thank you. There was one late hand up that I cannot deny that. Yagis Abanus. Yeah, I think you can. Any kind of final thoughts from your side? I think that we're getting into overtime, but I didn't want to deny the floor to the only hand that we had up. It would have been not. Yagis.
I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear.
Ask my question in Turkish or?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Benim sorum adil dönüşüm konusuna ilişkin olacaktı. Yani ben toplantıya katıldığımda ilk başta webinar metodunu gördüğümde karşılıklı bir soru cevap kısmının olmayacağını farz etmiştim. Yanılmışım. O yüzden hani dinlerken adil dönüşüme ilişkin vurguları belki detaylı dinleyememiş olabilirim. Eğer olay buysa şimdiden hani kusura bakmayın, tekrara düşmeye yol açacak sorular sorarsam. Yani her ne kadar tabii Türkiye'de net belirlenmiş hedefler henüz olmasa da, bir yeşil dönüşüm netçe açıklanmış olmasa da böyle bir şey gündeme geldiğinde bir de bunun bir dönüşüm ayağı olacak. İstihdamı ve daha toplumsal unsurları etkileyen bir sürece girilecek. Bu bağlamda farklı yapılar, işte sendikalar, işçi sendikaları, işveren sendikaları bir araya gelmek durumunda kalacak. Buna dair yani, şeyi merak ettim açıkçası. İşveren sendikalarıyla işçi sendikalarının bir araya gelmesi, bu konuları tartışması gibi durumlar oldu mu? Hani şunu duydum, devlet bürokratlar düzeyinde işte Paris Anlaşması'na yönelik çeşitli savunuculuk faaliyetleri oluyor. Bunları anlıyorum. Ama daha çok işte işçi ve işverenlerin bir araya gelmesi gibi çalışmalarda oldu mu onu merak ettim. Yani kısaca hani ben kendimi de tanıtmadan başladım. Kusura bakmayın. Yağız, Yeşil Düşünce Derneği'nde çalışıyorum ben. Bizim de yürüttüğümüz bir yeşil ekonomi programımız var. O kapsamda da adil dönüşüm konusuna odaklanıyoruz bu sene. Dolayısıyla hani biz de bu gibi toplantılarda, yani bu gibi toplantıların yapılmasını, kolaylaştırılmasını önemli buluyoruz. Hani buna dair de deneyimleri dinlemek benim için önemli olur diye bu soruyu sormak istedim. Herkese bilgiler ve organizasyon için teşekkür ediyorum.
Thank you very much. Derek, are you still there?
Yes, I'm.
Yeah, you want to talk a little bit about maybe, because there's a lot of work that you mentioned in your presentation, there's a lot of work on just transition in Poland especially, but not only in Poland, but I think that Poland is something that you're probably more familiar. Then there's also the social pact that is taking place in Europe.
Yeah,
Maybe
exactly. So with the presentation we mentioned the entire framework indeed. So this is the just transition mechanism where you have different elements. But going deeper into that, yes, indeed. Originally in the EU, we had a few years discussion of the coal regions in transition with different partners, social partners, and I think it fits into the general social dialogue. So the social dialogue as a self-standing institution where you have the different partners of the social dialogue, this is how you institutionalize the framework in the EU, and you have a dedicated body which is within the EU institutional framework, the Economic Social Committee. This is one thing. And now when we talk about the Green Deal and the Climate Pact in general, the Commission also stimulates that work stream. So so the coal regions, we upgraded them to the permanent body of the platform, and they have their activities as well. So I think this would be the extra layer to what we presented before.
But this is something that, if you talk about trade unions, and we had the industrial unions, they feel there is a feeling that yes, there are strong elements about just transition in the EU Green Deal, but they don't feel enough heard and enough integrated. And there is a strong agenda to ensure that this is going to happen. And especially, this is not only from a social point of view, not only for the union, but also now that there's a talk about extending the ETS to transportation and buildings. This is not going to be about companies anymore. It's going to be about people, and companies. Nursel, this. Companies, big companies like many that we know, can hedge their risk, and they have the means and they know how to do this. The ordinary people, don't know, they don't have the means, they don't know how to do this, they can't do this. But also it is going to affect very broad sectors of society. The automotive industry is changing. It's gonna, you're gonna change from, making perfect German automobiles with perfectly working cylinders into electric motors. I mean, that is going to change things, competing with people in other places on different technologies. So yes, there is concern, and my sense is that this is a piece that will need to be further explored. It is still seen as a little bit of an add-on. I think that my friends in the European institution will probably slap me on the wrist for this, but I'm just expressing what we heard from many in the trade union movement, that they would like to see a deeper integration. But thank you very much. We will come back to this. We will dedicate the next session to getting into the great detail into these topics, especially that the whole Fit for 55 package will be available at that time, and we will have a little bit more history. It is very easy to make promises and say things. I think that by October we will see a little bit more of track history on how things have been handled. So this remains to be seen, but this is important. We have seen transition in Central and Eastern Europe. We have seen transition in Central Europe. Some of it poorly managed, and some of them not managed at all. And it has been traumatic for society. There was society that has benefited in some degree from resources in some cases for the union, some cases not. So it's something that we will keep in mind. But thank you very much for your question. With this, we have been a bit over time. I'd like to apologize for our speakers for keeping them this much. But we will see you again in October. We will hopefully by that time you can be in Brussels, and we hope that you will join us on that occasion. I would be remiss without first of all thanking the speakers, also the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Turkey, the European Commission, but also my colleagues that have been so active in making sure that this happened. First of all, our partners Kemal and Nihan, that we could have that. Obviously, this is where our partners go work together, but also Thomas Mertens and Marina Maciadi, who have put a lot of effort into doing this, a lot of learning by doing. But I think that in the end we have come through in what was a good discussion. Mr. Bural, any last words from your side, or I don't want to press you and to surprise you, But we again thank the government of Turkey for support and participation.
Teşekkürler. Sadece son olarak tekrar tüm proje ekibine çok başarılar diliyorum. Başarılı bir çalışma olmasını temenni ediyorum. Sağ olun.
Then thank you very much to all of you, and we shall see you in October, hopefully in Brussels. Thank you.
Hoşçakalın.
Teşekkürler.
Bye bye. Bye bye. Thank you.
Hoşça kalın. Bye.